So now we're on to phase 3 of the process, and that's the escrow, title, and closing phase. Escrow is the amount that you must have. It used to be called earnest money. I guess it's still called earnest money, to show that you are a serious buyer. It's usually held either by an attorney of your choosing if you're the buyer, or held by the title agent if you're not working with an attorney, and sometimes it's even held by the broker. In Miami, the truth of the matter is most brokers don't want to have their own trust accounts because the trust accounting rules are so stringent that they would rather farm that process out to someone else to handle the money so that it doesn't threaten their liability. But your money has to be escrowed, and it can accumulate over the life of the buying process. You put down a small amount in the beginning. You put down an additional amount after a certain number of days or a key date or a key occurrence, and then you have to have the whole contract funded by a certain period of time. If you're a cash buyer, the cash usually goes into an escrow account. If you're a funded buyer by a lender, the lender usually holds on to the money until the last minute, until all the documentation is signed and they give the green light so that the money comes in and it goes out all within 24 hours. I know these are a lot of steps, but stay with me, please. Bear with me. I think this is valuable information for some people who aren't familiar with the process. The seventh step in the process is the title documentation and the title policy issuance. Title insurance is what I mean. So the way that works is usually either through an attorney in the state of Florida. Attorneys are affiliated with the Attorney's Title Fund, or they're affiliated with one of the national title underwriters like Fidelity or First American or somebody like that. And they issue title through their law firm or through an independent title company that some attorneys had established in the past. But there can also be independent title agents, which we find a lot of that in Miami. And they all basically do the same thing. They do a review of the title commitment. They do a lien search. They make sure that the survey is for what the property is, that it's an accurate survey. And they review all of the documentation. I say title, but there's really a lot more to the title process than merely reviewing the title and knowing what the exclusions are. So we're in the home stretch now. We're going to talk about the closing. And this is when people get really stressed and exciting. I've seen closings go extremely smoothly. I've seen closings go horribly. And it's really a matter of preparation. Prior preparation prevents poor performance was never more true than in a real estate closing. So the things that you're going to have to bring to a real estate closing are obviously your identification documentation. You know, you're going to have 2 pieces of ID to sign a document that conveys real estate. You're also going to have, and hopefully this was prepared in advance, the conveyance documents, the deed, the mortgage, the resolution if it's a corporate resolution that allows the individuals to sell the property, a resolution that authorizes that particular individual to sell the property on behalf of the corporation. So the closing table is when all of the documentation is exchanged. The buyer sits on one side, the seller sits on the other side. Of course, it can be done by power of attorney and mail-aways or proxies or surrogates. But it's where you spend, 30 minutes going over the documentation one last time, signing it, and that's how you actually convey from one party to the other party. After you actually sign the documents, if you're going to be lender funded, the lender will approve the documentation, and that's when they'll shoot the wire to the closing agent. Sometimes they'll give the wire in advance of the actual closing, but they won't authorize the distribution until they get the documentation on, in their little hands. After that, then you want to talk about, usually happens, you can do it electronically these days, or you can do it the next day. You go down to the county clerk's office or the recorder's office, and you record the conveyance. You get the documents stamped and approved by the county clerk's office, and that is the final phase of the official conveyance to the buyer from the seller. The other thing you have to worry about is, of course, taxation, the doc stamps, the intangible stamps. All that's taken care of. It's pre-planned out, but it's all taken care of as part of the closing, so that you can convey the property pretty quickly. I closed recently for a Brazilian friend of mine who bought a condo here in Miami in an area called Aventura, and she paid cash, and she bought a condo right on the water, so you have an ocean view and a bay view and everything else. And it was a fairly new condo, so it was beautifully done, beautifully tricked out, wooden floors, had the speaker system throughout. And she was so happy after the closing. She had a party within a week, and she just, you just see the happiness flowing through her. Now that's the best case scenario. That's the best of all possible worlds. It doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes you get the buyers who get buyer's remorse. They move into the condo, they realize that something's leaking, something doesn't work, they got the wrong parking spot, their car's been towed. There are all these residual issues that take hold after the conveyance actually takes place. Now, if you have a good closing, you won't run into that stuff, but it does happen. Hopefully, you won't need an attorney to get involved to make sure that things are actually corrected. Oftentimes, it's just a matter of somebody not putting one piece of paper in the right slot or not doing it in time. So after the closing and you move in, I think you probably need a week after you move in to finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief and experience the American dream. I'm the owner of a brand new piece of property here in South Florida. The first thing an attorney can do is provide actual intelligence about the process to people who are unfamiliar with the process. There are a lot of foreign buyers here in Miami, and they get wary. The process is different than it is in their home country or their home state, and they really want somebody that they can trust to help them understand the process. It's hard to trust a stranger, understand that. The security that you get in working with an attorney, and it's some security, it's not 100% fail-proof, is that you know that an attorney is licensed, you know that his license depends on how he interacts with his clients, you know that his license is a valuable part of how he makes his living, so the chances that he's going to do something stupid, although it certainly does happen, are not that high. Usually an attorney is just for lack of a better word, and we use this ourselves in the industry, we're paper pushers. It's somebody else's money. We're just completely disinterested in the process. It's just a process, and we're a facilitator. So what can we do to help specifically? We can provide knowledge about local professionals, whether they be realtors or mortgage brokers or tax specialists or property managers or designers or whatever it is that you might need. We can provide some intelligence about that. I wouldn't go so far as to say that we can always provide a referral, but if we do provide a referral, it should be 3 independent individuals that you can choose from that either we've worked with in the past or that we have some familiarity with their work. So another way we can help is with the formation of an entity, whether it be a domestic or either a Florida entity, an LLC, in order to buy the property. We can do that for you. We can also, through our service associates, form offshore companies, whether it be the BVI or Panama or some of the other popular places these days. An attorney can serve as sort of a one-stop shop to handle all those things for you. We can help in phase 2, which is the finding the property with the introductions to realtors. We can provide you with some market intelligence. We can provide you with the condo due diligence, things that are just not commonly known, like what is the reserve status of a condominium, what's the foreclosure rate in the building. Not every attorney is going to know that kind of thing, but if you have a good real estate attorney, they should be able to answer those questions for you simply by the amount of work that they do and the relationships that they have with realtors and them staying on top of their craft. Another way that an attorney can help in the process is negotiating the contracts, reviewing the contracts, making sure that the dates are adhered to and they're basically realistic. I mentioned the FAR bar earlier. The FAR bar has both a seller approval, the seller attorney approval caveat, and a buyer attorney approval caveat. So an attorney can act as a way out if you get itchy feet or cold feet an attorney, if you have that addendum attached to your FAR bar contract, can be a way of saying, okay, everything else has happened, but the truth is we don't want the property. So my attorney says it's a no-go, and therefore it's a no-go. So that's always like a good smart bomb to have. During the escrow, title, and closing phase, as I mentioned before, we can serve as the escrow agent. We can provide the title insurance most of the time. We can handle the closing. If you look, I'm sitting in my conference room. Most attorneys have a decent sized conference room where people can meet and discuss things. My conference room happens to stand as a perfect closing place. It's centrally located in downtown Brickell, so I provide that service alone, whether or not I'm involved in the closing. I often rent out my conference room as a closing station. I call it the Brickell Closing Station. Of course, you've got to pay Uncle Sam. The attorneys can pay the taxes for you, of course not out of our own pockets, just in case you were wondering. And record the documentation, the conveyance documentation, the preparation of documentation. So there's a myriad of ways that an attorney can be useful in a real estate transaction. They are not absolutely necessary, so don't let anyone tell you that they are absolutely necessary. But a good real estate attorney can do quite a few things for you and really make for a smooth transaction. So now I want to talk about our fees. It's an important question when you're buying a piece of real estate, and it's something that people often ask up front, so I'll tell you what our fees are. And by the way, if you ever have any questions, you can email me at bob@thevictorialawgroup.com. Happy to answer one-off questions for you within reason. But if you're going to actually engage me as an attorney, here's how our fee structure works. First of all, depending on what you need us for, we charge a flat fee up front. Now, the flat fee will vary within a range depending on whether or not you're working with a realtor, whether or not you want us to do the contract negotiating, whether or not you want us to do the contract drafting, and how involved you want us to be on the front end. So my flat fee in the beginning depends on all of those variables. I've charged as little as $500 to put together some documents on behalf of the seller, but I've charged as much as $2,500 for just a residential closing as an upfront fee. Some attorneys will use an escrow fee if they act as the escrow agent for the transaction. I typically do not charge an escrow fee. And the reason that is because if I'm going to do the closing, the escrow has to flow through me anyway, and it's really part of the transaction. However, if it's a complicated escrow, and by complicated I mean if money's coming from a lot of different sources, like the grandmother's providing 50% from Peru, the brother-in-law is providing 10% from Ecuador, the mother-in-law is providing 5% from Panama, and then you've got some money that you're going to cash out in a stock, and it's all coming from different sources. That usually means that my staff is going to be involved much more actively than they would normally be for normal escrow. So I will charge an escrow fee in situations like that. And the closing fee. Now, as I said, we're here in my conference room. Sometimes I charge a closing fee, sometimes I don't. And the variables are going to depend on how much work I have to do to prepare for the closing. And how much work means husband and wife buyer, single buyer, entities that we have to form, documentation that we have to prepare. Are we paying the taxes? Is somebody else paying the taxes? Who's handling the recording? All of these things are bundled together under one closing fee. However, like I said, if it's a simple transaction where I'm doing nothing but just acting as an advisor for a seller or a buyer, and where they're just using my facilities like my conference room, I don't always charge a closing fee. And there's a question about title insurance. How much is that going to cost? Title insurance is a promulgated rate in Florida. And by promulgated, it means that it's a fixed percentage and formula to determine what that is. So depending on the size of the transaction and depending on whether or not it's cash and or lender funded, then that will determine what the title policy will be. If you're still hanging on at this point, you are a trooper. As I said in the beginning, if you have any questions, you can always email me, bob@thevictorialawgroup.com. I'm happy to send you a copy of this outline. I'm happy to send you a sample FAR bar agreement. Happy to send you a sample HUD-1, which breaks down all the actual costs involved in a real estate transaction and where the money goes at the closing table, and happy to send you our fee statement so that you get some idea of, you know, if you're going to use us, what it's going to cost to use us, or if you're going to go with somebody else. It's a tool that allows you to negotiate, bargain, whatever you want to do. Happy to do it. Anyway, if you go to our website, you look where it says on my bio page, Bob Arnold, it says that I want to experience the joy of helping great people realize their dreams. And I truly mean that. It's a very satisfactory part of my practice when I am able to share in the experience of someone getting their, quote, dream house. That's a very cool thing. And if I can be of service to you, if I can help you in that way, please do not hesitate to contact us. Thank you.